Good morning, Dean Zhan, Mr. Lai, Professor Chen, Professor Jin, my website friends, Crystal Hill, and Professor Trey, and ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great privilege and honor for me to be invited over here to share with you my very, very old and humble opinions on basically how to teach English in the college efficiently in the 21st century, using technology and facing the unprecedented challenge like what I have read in the newspaper yesterday. People in Taiwan, I'm sure you share with me too, that our college students' professors of English is not as good as that of the high school students. Graduate students' profession is even worse. Without full training, plagiarism, word writing, and so forth, the quality is declining rapidly. Although Mr. Lai and I, and have been working closely together with your colleague before, Director Michael Riley, in your office in the past, also with your office, and also in university in UK, Singapore, United States, all over. We've been trying to help our students to learn better. And finally, I found that the best way, the only way, in spite of how bad the situation, how poor our students in their learning motivation, then I think there's only one key factor, and that's the teacher himself. Providing, inserting innovative strategies using technology, assuring student-teacher interaction in any formal or informal ways, including classroom activities, preparing materials, guiding, counseling. And that's exactly what has been described thoroughly in the great book I've been reading for 3 months. I love it. The Diamond Sutra, 金刚经里面所讲的, talking about the Marco wisdom, 大智慧. And this 大智慧 can be used today. I'm not going to show you about this one from the perspective of culture. Intercultural communication, intra-cultural communication. Intra means of the same identity like we Chinese over here. We Taiwanese, and it is difficult for the faculty, the professors, even to communicate efficiently with your students. Sometimes I heard so often, I'm fed up with my students. They're so stupid, lazy, lousy. So I'm going to quit. And there's a saying in Chinese, the worst sad thing is to relinquish everything. The sad thing, 哀莫大于心死. Taiwan, to me, I think is a great place from the perspective of anthropology. Taiwan is so unique. There's never any place in the whole world in the Chinese-speaking communities. I'm talking about Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, mainland China, Malaysia, and Thailand, and so forth. So linguistically and culturally enriched like Taiwan. And so in one way, Taiwan is very chaotic, but on the other hand, there are so many brilliant people being trained. And so there's an up and a down over here for that. So today I'm going to talk about, very briefly, 2 parts. First, the cross-cultural awareness and communication between faculty and the students, student and the parents, and also friend and friends in the immersion. English is a mean of instruction, which is actually is an irreversible trend. So 不可能再回头的路. Just now already mentioned, and I've been reading recently about from this report, and from about the impression of the young generation the mature generation and the older generation, and what is the common grounds for all of us to strive for survival financially, academically, also in career, and also in a long-term range for this country and this society. So in that matter, culture is the most important, and that's what the Diamond Sutra, 金刚经 它能讲的大智慧, and this kind of great maximum wisdom is embodied in our teaching material, in our learning, in our guidance with the student, also in our communication, interaction with the students. So Taiwan used to be very good. I'm very happy to do. I was so lucky. Actually, when Patient asked me to come over here to share some about my view with all of you, about 3 or 4 months ago, I hesitated, but finally, I asked my wife. My wife said, "No, don't talk anymore." But recently, when I was reading a series and a heap of report like this one, I found it is necessary for me to share with as many material as possible with whoever is interested in the higher education development in Taiwan, particularly the internationalization of education in this country. It's very important. Now, many of you probably do not understand that back in 1994, or starting from 1980, Taiwan was regarded as one of the most prominent countries in the whole world. Or they're so small, just a little fraction of mainland China in geographic size. However, Taiwan entailed its international recognition of international education, academic achievement, scientific achievement, trading surplus, and so forth. Therefore, on February 21st, the New York Times, San Jose Mercury News in the Silicon Valley, and the Christian Science Monitor simultaneously reprinted and printed a key story on the front page of New York Times. And the title is Reverse Brain Drain. United States to Taiwan. So recognizing the professional attitude, hardworking attitude of Taiwanese students in the United States. And here is what I repeat from the article. If you are interested in this one, I'll be very happy to transmit or send to you by email the whole report of the New York Times article. And this article also describes the achievement not only of Taiwan, listing Taiwan on top of the list, to be followed by Singapore, Korea, Hong Kong, but China was never mentioned. But today, with the evolution of higher education, I think the government should be held responsible for the mistakes of educational policy. However, no matter what happened, I think it's important for all of us to focus on 2 things. Number one, cross-cultural communication between the intra-cultural. We factor here in Taiwan with our students. And secondly, Taiwan has been so lucky. When it comes to the end of the world, some great opportunity pops up while there is a crisis. 危机突然转机. In other words, many more and more international students are coming to study in Taiwan. While our birth rate is going through undergrowth, 少子化的结果, now somebody's going to make it up. Students from Southeast Asia, from all over the world, even from China, including my own students from Xi'an, Jiangsu, Gansu, Sichuan coming over. And the one reason they like it over here is, number one, Taiwan is free. Taiwan is the freest, the most so-called democratic state in all of the Chinese-speaking communities. I think that's a very important linguistic, sociological term. 华人社会, Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, Singapore, and so forth. So, bearing this in mind, the reason why everyone talking about the decline of our academic performance in higher education. There are three basic reasons. Number one, decline of learning motivation academically on the part of our students. Motivation. And motivation, 学习动机. For all of those before 1990, whoever want to be the teachers in the high school, secondary school, and middle school, we have to go through the basic teacher preparation for 4 years. And one of the basic criteria to learn is 引起动机 plus material development, educational psychology, application of audio-visual aids, not just 照品宣科. And audio-visual aids has been evolved into what it has been called multimedia, 多媒体 presentation, and now Facebook, email, whatever is available to support our teaching. Our students are just standing on the two sides of the edge, 刀刃两面, and forgetting the major responsibility. Number two, incompetence in English on the students' part. And unfortunately, we have too many students in Taiwan today. Christopher, I'm sorry, dear, you're staying here, but to confess to you, we have too many disqualified students studying in your class. So I used to teach the elite students at 台湾师大英语系, 台大外文系. I can never forget these bright students with good consensus learning, interaction between the student and myself. Even today, when I'm 75 years old, we still have good communication. But too many students, they don't do that. So, and as a result, and that's a policy, the wrong policy provided by the government, but too many people blame the government. The government, Ministry of Education, should not be blamed. It's a democratic movement. 20 years ago, there were too many laymen in education. There were a number of poor professors who taught and performed badly in classes. No student wanted to take their course. Now, can you recall, for those poor, badly performing faculty, what they usually do is they turn to another side to participate in another social movement, social activities. And unfortunately, they pick up the wrong train, making the wrong decision, saying and claiming in strong terms that from a humanistic perspective, we are so pathetic with our next generation. The door to the university and college is so narrow that they have to make a choice between life and death for going to the university. So these people mobilize the poor legislators, 不务正业的立法委员, pushing them, work together with them. They need a platform to push the Ministry of Education to create as many universities as possible. And whoever wants to establish a university anywhere in Taiwan, Ministry of Education, please give them subsidy, support, money. So all of a sudden, the number of universities mushroomed from 50 in 1970 to today 163. At one time, when I visited Ministry of Education in the Netherlands, Holland, I was talking with them about the pride of our education in Taiwan. I was saying that in Taiwan, every student has the chance to go to university for learning English and subject and so forth. And I say we have now 163 universities. And the Ministry of Education say, Dr. Lee, excuse me, Dr. Lee, am I wrong? Are you talking about 160 or 16 in your country? 16 or 160. In Holland, in the Netherlands, we have only 27 universities, including technical universities. So you can see this kind of joke is spreading over. And the third is failure, not only on the student, but excuse me for saying, our dear colleagues, for some of the faculty members too. We fail to realize that, or to appreciate the core value and the significance and the function of culture. How to persuade students, how to make the best use of office hours to persuade the student, even the student is hopeless. We still can do something to change their heart, to sway their mind, to save them from being drowned in the ocean. And that's exactly what I have been trying to do after I left the elite university at Shida and Taida. Of course, after work, I was recruited to work for 2 years in San Francisco and 8 years.
I prepared every single slide on my
6 more years working as the Director General of the Ministry of Education. Just because of this kind of diverse experience, meeting, talking.
So I'm going to divide it into 2 parts. The first part is the basic theory of culture. Why it is important, how it can be transmitted interpersonally, intrapersonally, and also international. Between our Taiwanese in Taiwan, or between our foreigners in Taiwan, like Professor Crystal here, and other more and more international countries.
So bearing this in mind,
what kind of trouble, what kind of problem, what kind of conflict I will get
by talking about two parts.
I'm also going to mention to you that last May 5月的时候，师范大学 they sponsored something exactly like this one, inviting scholars from New Zealand, Australia, talking about similar issue. And I was very happy that they talk about something like implementing cross-cultural awareness in the same class. And the title is International Conference on Teaching and Learning on Higher Education, focusing on pedagogy. And this conference is going to focus on culture in my part. So they talk about what their major is diagnosing and reviewing pedagogy for the new generation learning. 新世代. So talking about the 新世代 is exactly our 新世代 in your class in Taiwan. Their attitude, their motivation, their English proficiency, and so forth. And so those are the generation who have learned English for more than 12 years. And after 12 years, they can speak, they can write, they can listen. So last year, when I was attending a conference at National Taiwan University, then all of a sudden there was a pouring rain, 大雨滂沱. So I took side in the student center, and many of us were over there. All of a sudden there was a brave, tall young man riding a bicycle. I could tell immediately that's from Scandinavian, 北欧来的学生 riding a bicycle and approaching the student center. And he just jumped down the bike and said, "Excuse me, sir, where is the computer center?" He was asking 2 graduate students. I could tell that these 2 students are graduate students by judging from their face, their age. And then all of a sudden, one of the students holding the lunchbox, like a 便当, just turned around. Then all at the moment, I was going to jump in to say, well, I'm asking for the computer center. But before I did that, another professor just stood up and said, well, the computer center is right behind you, behind this building. Well, that person, the gentleman at the gym said, well, thank you very much. And then afterwards, the 2 gentlemen holding the lunch boxes, definitely graduate students from the School of Engineering, then all of a sudden burst into saying, oh, 原来营地一直吹计中哦，计中是计算中心，计算机中心。So this really, we tell us that our students hardly had the experience or exposure to practical learning, the native learning infrastructure. And that's why international students in Taiwan are very important to us. And that's why EMI is essential if, and only if, we professors provided the strategy, the step of learning, step by step, depending on the different levels of the student. We can deal with the elementary level, advising them, helping them, support them like a scaffold, 像支架一样把它扶着 and upward become independent, and then we can go to graduate school and so forth. So that's a new journey. And then next one, they talk about building a learning ecosystem. But ecosystem, new term, but ecosystem in education means people and the system. Now, people here mean we're talking about faculty, staff, professors, dean, president, and vice president, and so forth. I've met hundreds and hundreds of presidents, chancellors, vice chancellors in your country, in the United States. I kept wondering, why is it that chancellors, presidents, vice chancellors in outside Taiwan are so friendly, so in low profile, responding to my email? But why is it when it comes to Taiwan, our president usually do not respond to those they do not know? Okay, so that's the case. That's the culture. So that's the culture we have to learn. And secondly, renew pedagogy. So we are going to start a new pedagogy for learning, and also flipping the role of teacher-student. By flipping, actually there's a new term called the old strategy. 就是根本就是新的辅导的方法，用新的名词。主要原因就是师生互动，学生要准备。That's it. That's flipping the classroom. But secondly, we are going to see now, ladies and gentlemen, we are so lucky now with 少子化. We have more and more students in Taiwan. According to statistics of middle education, we have more than 25,000, 26,000多位外籍生在台湾修学位，当然这包括陆生等等所。And as far as I can understand, Malaysian students like Taiwan the best. Here in Taiwan, I like the Malaysian student the best. Because Malaysia is also the place that preserves the Chinese culture outside the Chinese community in Southeast Asia. And over here, they say that now there are all the foreign students in Taiwan like to stay in Taiwan. They work with the Taiwanese student for basic reasons. Number one, have an ideal academic environment, good professor. Now, if you read the newspapers over here, say, well, our professors 不尽责任，教不好，英文不会说。And I said, that's totally wrong. We have so many wonderful professors who are caring, who are professional in English, who support the teacher, 做好人，说好话，做好事帮着学生。但是台湾的媒体呢，坏事报了一大堆，渲染；好事呢就报道正经的事情，连天的柯承东的案子呢，整个就是那一些，可这些好事情不报。Number two, sufficient scholarship. Taiwan provided us Taiwan scholarship according to the Constitution of the United Nations, a World Bank, that's justifiable. 台湾学生没什么好抱怨的。在经济到一个 GDP 的阶度的时候，你就是你的 responsibility to help the poor. That's something very good. Geographical location, Taiwan, fortunately, we are detached from Chinese mainland. So we are free, independent. And also, this is a good location for learning, for coming over. And number four, reasonable tuition fees, and finally, learning formal Chinese. 学正体中文. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to tell you, it happened that when I came back from overseas to teach in Taiwan in 1980, I was assigned to wear another hat, in addition to being a professor of Department of English. And I was also the director of 师大国语中心 Mandarin Training Center. An extremely challenging job for 10 years. 非常艰苦. When I worked for the first 6 months, I tried to decide to quit. 太苦，像苦行僧一样的. But after 1 year, I love it. In those 10 years, I realized the significance, the trend of international education in a global setting. The growth of Chinese, of Mandarin Chinese, and also its future. And later on, 因缘际会, I was lucky enough to be recruited by the Ministry of Education to work for 2 years in San Francisco. That's why I met, number one, 田长林校长. And later on, Dean John Hennessy of Stanford University School of Engineering, who is now the president. And later on, when I went to, and also UC Davis and so forth, and then in Washington, D.C., I happened to be an adjunct professor in University of Maryland, College Park, advising all kind of advice to those international universities for number one, the learning of Chinese language, field study, cultural learning, teaching methodology, also policy of education for the secondary and elementary education, so forth, rendered on the Department of Education of the United States. That's why I became a good friend to the Secretary of Education, 美国教育部部长 Richard Riley, 变成我很好的朋友。So this is a good sign that more and more are coming to you. But when the international come to you, you cannot talk to them all in Chinese. But when they come over, it's going to be to serve both the best interest, both to them and to the teachers by ourselves, and also to our students. So why does cross-cultural awareness matter? Okay, that's important from over here. And what is the implication about implication? The implication is culture is important, and it's important. So back in 1985, I was lucky enough to be invited to participate in the commencement of Harvard University. And when I was over there, I found that, well, that's a picture I took back in 1985. Then I traveled, I found all the universities, Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, Nottingham, and so forth, all the universities, from the east to the west, from the United States to Europe, even to Southeast Asia today, just think of university in India. Many of them are crazy about learning Chinese, and that's why Tsinghua University has set up an education center in India for promoting the teaching and learning of Chinese, as well as promoting the interaction, collaboration between Indian university and their counterparts in Taiwan. Wang Weizhong, 清大的国际长, is responsible for this. All the universities, I found that even today are striving for academic excellence, internationalization, and globalization. Now, just think of one mind. Our student, I would like to say, not too pessimistic, that the vast majority, or at least 50% of our college students today, do not realize their future, do not realize the so-called academic perspective of globalization. Many of them have lost in the sea of learning because their professors and also their parents fail to advise them. So both professors and also parents should be held accountable for all of this. So the goal of cultural higher education grows in wisdom, providing service in the future for the country, for the society, and also go for internationalization. My next door neighbor, I live on Fuxinanlu. My next door neighbor, my neighbors are all excellent people. My next door neighbor is a doctor from Sutian Yiyuan. We've been friends. We exchange our children, but I'm much older. So one day, the son of Dr. Dean, the voluntarily came to my home and say, Professor Lee, you're a good friend of my mother. Her birthday is coming. Could I tape some interview on you and our other neighbors and to give it to my mother as a birthday gift through that? Of course, it's my pleasure. I was very, very happy for that. So this kind of internationalization, this kind of culture, provide this kind of excellent person. So I advise sometimes, and very often he came to Mount to ask some question. He graduated from Taida, Department of Economics. My cousin also attended Taida Jingji Xi. But Christopher can never believe that in the top university, National Taiwan University, Department of Economics, during the first class of microeconomics, the first day of the class, there were 120 students attending for the first class. The second week, only about half. The third week, about 1/3. The The first week about only 20 students. But by the time of midterm exam and the final exam, all of them appeared. The president, the professor didn't say anything. The only thing we counsel ourselves, 感到安慰的就是说 students in Taida are talented students. They are so gifted students. But students, do you believe that 旷世的天才没有好好的 nurture education， 将来就会变成像毛泽东，也是天才，而不是邓小平，这样就可能变政界，可能变成像柯震东这个政治流的。So that's nature. So that's the case I'm going to talk with you. Secondly, education going global is important. My friend, former president of Yale University for 22 years, Richard Lau, wrote a public in Newsweek, the world's most global university, and he said all the university have to go global, otherwise it's going to be hopeless for the development for the future. The strategic development, here is the president, Sun Kang-yi, and I was invited to give a lecture at Stanford, at Yale University on the future of Chinese, as well as the learning of culture, the significance of learning both. Students love it. American students, British students are very open-minded. They try to enjoy something, they learn something they don't know in their school. So when I went to Yale, Harvard, Stanford, Johns Hopkins, particularly Columbia University, I was surrounded by the students, asking all kind of unusual questions that our Taiwanese students never ask. So when I came back to Taiwan, I told my students, just one thing, students, be sure to ask questions in the classroom so that you can keep yourself awake. Otherwise, you're going to fall asleep. Remember, no questions are silly questions. And if you don't want to ask questions in the classroom, please come to my office. I usually, even though I was the dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Shixin University, ladies and gentlemen, I went to my office 6 days a week, sometimes on Saturday. At home, I work on the computer, responding to the question of the student. Secondly, the social education dimension of culture. Why culture is important? Culture, just to say in one Chinese word, 教养, nurture is culture. Cross culture, interculture, international culture for communication. The reason I'm mentioning this one is, I sincerely hope that someday, be sure to go to the library to read this book. 战略专家 Samuel Huntington of Harvard University and Lawrence Harrison, Culture Matter. 我想刚才传阅一下。After the book was published, Wall Street Journal, Wall Street 华尔街日报 then provided another very or extremely positive comment about why culture play a role in social development in the country today. And in that book, they also said that in their study back in 1960, the per capita GNP of Korea and Ghana are exactly the same. 50几年前 The country, Ghana used to be a rich country in Africa. But why is it today all these countries and many others are bombarded with the crisis of Ebola? In the meantime, look at Korea. Taiwanese used to look down upon Korean. We call them 高丽棒, stubborn. And Korea used to pray to Taiwan for help. But today, let me tell you something about this one. 3 years ago, I read a very, very interesting New York Times article saying Hyundai helped the economy of the southern United States to survive. 现代汽车让美国南部各州的经济起死回生。Hyundai 在Kentucky 设厂，在阿拉巴马，整个你看第一期的汽车丑得不得了。你看现代的Hyundai汽车不亚于 Lexus， 不亚于 Mercedes-Benz， 不亚于 BMW 外形，而且呢，他们雄心大志， we are going to overtake Mercedes-Benz. 有些人说 that's a dream. And they say, well, that's a dream, that's true. Everybody should have a dream. But with a dream, we should have faith. 要有信心. And beyond the faith, this is another word needed, act. It's time for us to take action. 这三个字是谁说的呢？芝加哥大诗人叫 Carl Stanford. And by 1983, former President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, 就引用这句话，在经济最萧条的 the downturn of economy in the United States, Ronald Reagan quoted dream, faith, act. 我们现在台湾学生呢，就是没有 dream, 没有 faith, 没有更没有 act. 而这时候老师可以当这个 facilitate for that. 所以今天你看整个韩国，而到50年之后呢，你看50年之后 ，Ghana 还是做这个，我们台湾话叫头干处，没有什么改变。Korea 人起飞，然后全世界韩剧，我们台湾都被韩剧征服了。So in the conclusion, why culture is important. Cross the culture, everybody has to realize attitudes, value, belief, and microeconomics of prosperity. 这些都建立在基础上。台湾人拿个707的那个公事包跑遍全世界 ，That's our attitude. Our microeconomics prosperity 基本原因，客厅技工厂，全世界华人这样子。第二个就 Korean， 所以这些 ，Now how to maintain this one? And also when the MIT Foundation Board Chairman Donna Mead was in Taiwan in 2005, holding a conference in the International Conference Center， 在国际会议中心，他们发表演讲的一个座谈会。最后，他们的结论就是 ，with the development of not education but the cooperation like TSMC and all the other 红海 and so forth, and he said what we need. Well, he said first, ethics is important and the culture. And Morrison immediately added by saying, well, we just have 3 key words for TSMC. 3: honesty, ethics, and creativity. 请问这是我们在教学上也可以这么用，这个可以用在for communication with the student. So if talking about culture, basically, Libero from University of British Columbia has some very basic saying that all communication is cultural. My communication, I'm talking with you, I'm learning from you, and you are sharing with your experience later on what we can do together to wake up the student, to sway the attitude, to ignite the fire of the learning motivation. And that's what I'm going to tell you in the second part of it. So there are all many factors, individual factors, personal factors, and the conflict and so forth. So the challenge is very often we have miscommunication. And this is likely, not just possibly, it's likely, 极可能发生，像台湾社会上发生这个事情，很可能发生。但是这个时候我们需要 what is needed is number one, the teacher, the parents, and of course the head of the state, 国家的 policy maker. All these are just interlocked, 都环环相扣。And finally, cross-cultural communication variable by example of ideal, attitude, and behavior. 不同的 ideal， 先入为主的 wrong ideal, stubborn， 像今天的 Islamic States， 伊斯兰国，有这是极端人类极端的 cultural conflict。为什么这个情形呢？当然，教育本身，当然过去几千年来的 conflict， 无解的 conflict， 这个时候怎么办呢？事实上，我觉得，只要他们不要读《可兰经》，可能应该精读，要读了《金刚经》的话呢，整个观念可能会。I'm telling the truth. 这是我个人想法。Okay, finally, to solve the problem, and also the next topic, with time and space, fate, and personal responsibility. 有些有没有责任感？有些更没有责任感，那怎么办呢 ？Try to give them the sense and the faith and faith saving. Usually remain quiet and silent because they want to save their faith. And for me too, in many occasions, in this case, just tell them. No question, silly question. As long as you speak up, you stand up, you're going to feel great. And in that 2 hours, you are going to feel so energetic. And that's you have to take action and non-verbal communication. So finally, another point in this book, which I share with in Zhengda before, for a culture shock problem for foreign students, there are often international students coming to Taiwan. They might encounter culture shock. The culture shock occurs, and their reaction to anger, fear, anxiety. Some is going to try to run away. Some will even commit suicide, and so forth. It depends. And some are prompt to withdraw, go home. So the approach to the solution is identify the causes, observe the situation, and also approximate expectation. 给他们机会，给他们信心，告诉他们忍耐。昨天这样，我在半夜在等，因为 I'm coming off here. So last night I was so excited. I was sleepless last night. 想到这个就很兴奋。到最后就等着圣言的一个结膜经。结膜经里面就讲到，就是说到时候你就要，反正这些人相处的道理呢，把这些观念都等着在结膜经，在一些整个一些金刚经里面所讲的，最后讲 adjustment, culture and value, and that all need advice and support from all of the others. Now let me tell you, otherwise conflicts, misunderstanding, miscommunication will occur. Let me tell you some specific case. When I was recruited to work in Washington, D.C. starting from 1992, after San Francisco, my job, because I was a professor with a PhD degree, recruited 借调 to Washington, D.C. 不是传统是科研这样上来的。And because of that, I got so many friends in the United States. I was in Europe, in university, and so forth. So when I was over there, the first thing I did, being different totally from my predecessors, I wrote an open letters in English to all of the major universities in the United States, introducing myself to them, explaining the role and responsibility I have on behalf of Taiwan's Ministry of Education. The third is my wish in the future. I assured them back in 1992, education is going to go global, internationalized. Your student, we have to go overseas to learn something new. Like ours, the best thing we are from Taiwan should come over here to attend your university. You need them too. All of a sudden, many presidents invite me to visit, keeping me very, very busy. And that's what I did. My second job is to advise, to take care, to protect our Taiwanese students studying in the top universities. Usually, PhD student, or at least master. Totally no bachelor degree student. One of them, but at the time, there was so much in Johns Hopkins University. The Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. And one day, one PhD student from Taiwan stayed over there, called me. And he said, 李处长, I feel like committing suicide. I want to go home. I can't stay here anymore because my professor hates me. And to me, I think this is Greek to me. I've never heard in my whole life that a professor will hate a student. And I say, Mr. So-and-so, there must be some kind of gap of cultural communication. Either, number one, you never went to the professor's office to talk with them during the office hours. Or you never expressed a view or discussion in a classroom. Or thirdly, you never had sent a message to the professor. Or when the professor asked you any question, maybe you did not respond properly. Either you were nervous, or I'm wrong, forgive me, you poor English. So the best way for you to do, 天无绝人之路, there's no end of the world. Tomorrow, go to see your professor. Smilingly, knock the door smilingly, as a professor, so I prepare a question to ask you for advice. I'm always grateful to you for your teaching in class and so forth and so forth. So after that, they have recovered the relationship. But Taiwanese student is a 走向极端 for young case. Secondly, another American student in Taiwan attending a great school. 这是一个很棒很棒的研究所，很特殊研究所，不晓得研究所。This American student was my student from Michigan. After finishing studying in Shiji University, he became proficient in Chinese. He studied Chinese for 1 year. And after 1 year of Chinese intensive study, his Chinese is as good as yours or mine. So he was accepted to graduate school. And he was so active in offering services to all the students, the university, the graduate school and so forth. 做很多公益的事业。Finally, the professor gave him 80 point. 学习成绩 final grade 80. So the student burst into anger. That's not the point I deserve. I work for you, for everybody, for the university, for departments. I had to finish all the homework. But how come my classmate got 90, 85, and I was the lowest in the whole class? 假如台湾的学生或台湾的 student 80, they should be thankful, 叫谢天谢地了。But American student, that does not represent me. So he put on the Facebook using very, very vulgar, very severe words, expressing his views repetitively. And finally, we contacted him. I told the department chairman to talk with him. And finally, the professor explained why he did not deserve 85 or 90 as other students. Because number one, the quantity of research, the quality of the presentation, even though his English is good, and native speakers of English. But even native speakers of English does not necessarily can present good, fluent, solid contents as the non-native speakers of English. Am I right, Christopher? I'm sorry. Okay, so that's the contents. So contents-based. Finally, how display, 营销营善. So that's a very severe conflict. Okay, and the third question, case I want to mention very quickly to all of you. That's my only experience. I used to teach at 师范大学 and at 台大. The third head is Mandarin Training Center director for 10 years. The best institution for training foreigners for the learning of Chinese in the whole world. Mandarin Training Center has a student from any big names you can remember in the whole world. Nottingham, Cambridge, Oxford, United States, and so forth. And so I was recruited to work in the United States. And in 1992, Taiwan, for the first time, was admitted into the international organization APEC. And in 1982, the United States is going to sponsor the first unprecedented education minister meeting or ministerial level in Washington, D.C. So in the United States, Department of State, by mistake, sent an invitation to all of the ambassadors, representatives, including 台湾的驻美不是大使，是代表丁茂时 to attend a very, very high-level formal reception in the Department of State, 国务院，丁茂时. And then by the time when President received his invitation, well, he said that, I would like to go, but I cannot. If I did go over there, China definitely will blatantly protest against the United States. It's going to damage the relationship between Taiwan and the United States. Finally, 我们的副代表陈锡凡 called me. I went over there as a new director of culture division. Say, please try your best using your relationship to put or to add Ding Mao Shi's name on the list of our APEC delegation. The title is Senior Advisor to the Delegation. 很好的名字，资深顾问. I told Deputy Representative Chen say, the conference is going to start tomorrow. How can we change the list in the last minute? And then Deputy Mitchell was very impatient with me, and he didn't realize that he thought that why you're just a green foreign service person. And he said that if you can or cannot do it, it depends on you. 意思就是说能不能成功就看你，看不好也是等着瞧吧。So at the time I began to pray. Fortunately, I did something following American culture. Before I went to Washington D.C. to assume the position, I was stationed in San Francisco, and then I had a conference to attend. Before that, in University of British Columbia in Vancouver. So from Vancouver meeting, I'm friend to Vancouver, UBC. I turned the secretary to Washington D.C. I told my secretary be sure to arrange a formal meeting for me to talk with the organizer of the APEC on the American side. I want to talk to them. The organizer of this meeting for the first time. We too, they're anxious to know how to start it. So we met for the first time. So when we met in a very, very good restaurant on K Street in Washington, D.C., these people are so professional, very nice, very friendly. And they say, Dr. Lee, what's your concern about the forthcoming APEC meeting? And I say there are so many questions to talk about which will serve the best interest between you and us. So we became friends and talked about everything in detail. Finally, by the time of the conference, on the day of the opening session, I knocked at the door of the deputy secretaries. The venue was in Georgetown University. I said, Dr. Ginsburg, I have some trouble. I need your help. And he was nervous too. What's the problem? I said that our ambassador received an invitation from your Department of State to go over there, but he cannot go. So the only solution for that, number one, could we add his name on the list of our delegation as senior advisor to the delegation? Number two, I understand American culture from my professors. In American culture, American law, any formal document issued or sent out to anyone, like a passport, whatever, should not be expunged, should be destroyed, unless there's some kind of legal implication. 任何正式文件发出去要不可以随便作废，否则犯法的。So in order to avoid this problem, put his name on the list. So Dr. Ginsburg and his colleagues said, Dr. Lee, wait here. Wait here. So they went in for 30 minutes. 半个小时 didn't come out. And then I prayed. I said the job, it can be resolved. So after 30 minutes, Dr. Ginsburg came out and said, but Dr. Lee, everything is okay. So just because of that, I'm happy to tell you that 李茂时登堂入室，进入了美国国务院，由美国的教育部长 the Secretary of Education wrote on the 8th floor， 叫 Franklin Hall， 正式在这迎接他进入的地方。中美断交之后，不敢前无古人，但是却是后无来者。也就是我懂得美国的文化，以子之矛攻子之盾，然后大家要知道彼此互信、互相了解。So that's something very historical. And finally, the most important thing that cultural awareness and language fluency facilitate productive and advanced learning at National Taipei University 台北科大，非洲的奖学金学生、印度班上学生蜂拥而至到台科大、台大等等的 so forth. So all this we just tell you what can we do to accommodate, to help, or to take advantage of the international students through EMI. You certainly cannot lecture to the Indian student in Chinese. Of course, all the foreign in Taiwan are eager to learn Chinese, just like we are eager to learn English, Spanish, German when we are in their country. But the medium instruction must be in English. Now, how can we do it? We are all native speakers of English. Well, the only key word is thoroughly prepare for that. Organize the material, the teaching strategy. So what can you do? And also we have to realize no matter what native student or international student, when they come to the university, Harvard University had two slogans. Very few Taiwanese people realize this one. The two slogans carved on the high wall of the east side. The first thing is enter to grow in wisdom, depart better to serve better thy country and thy kind. May your country and your kind. Education, high education 本来就增广智慧，这里很深的感触。这种增广智慧就是《金刚经》里面讲大智慧，服务人群。这些诸恶莫作，众善奉行，这种胸怀。所以说，就从教会、从家庭、从学校，也从学校里，这就是这课就在 Harvard University was done. So I translate into Chinese like this one. Okay, so bearing this in mind, 我们的学生就，所以我们一句话就是，我们的学生现在根本智慧不够，所以不能成道。这道就是真正的 ultimate learning of the special discipline. 所以这智慧不是光是 intellectual capacity, attitude, cultural awareness, relationship between the student and the faculty, relationship between parents and the student, 然后 compassion 慈悲心给大家的同理心等等。一个人只要没有同理心，没有这种慈悲心，那不是每一个人都变成正洁，这种像动物一样的人吗？动物有的很可爱的。Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So international students, they can become a plus to us. 虽然我现在到了3级的学校，像世新 University, all the students coming over like this one. 3个里面有1/4就外国学生。What can I do? Of course, lecture in English. What I have to do? Prepare every single PowerPoint slide. Prepare the sentence I'm going to deliver. If I'm not interested, prepare the material that can be exciting, plus the multimedia. And finally, by that, that's American style, the European style. You do not just stand over there and lecture. No, that's too traditional. 到最后，学生爱上你 ，you love the student, and the student love you. Oh, I'm sorry, and the student love you too. So, so my first conclusion for this part is, international students can serve as input for facilitating cross-cultural awareness and international communication in EMI classes. So, if possible, try to have some more program like this one. And also, the trend of university in the whole world, taking the case from the British and so forth, study abroad, because communication, English, as important quality of pedagogy and research, cross-cultural awareness, education, internationalization, efficient communication, nurturing talents for international competitiveness, and all these are programs provided today by our Ministry of Education. 学海飞扬，学海逐梦，奖学金、公费留考， all kind of programs. The government has more than enough budget scholarship to provide to the students, to the faculty for overseas study. But our students don't know how to do that. And also, in order to teach the class, you have to be well prepared. Yesterday, I was editing a very important lecture. The former chancellor of UC Berkeley, Tian Changning 校长, in 1992, lecturing to all the student representatives from Taiwan pursuing advanced study in the United States, 同学会长. Under my invitation, addressing a very special topic, 我在海外留学的心路历程。整个历程怎么样？从进入 University of Louisville in Kentucky, Death for Survival, 生死交关, and how to manage to graduate from over there to go to Princeton University, and how to become the dean, the vice chancellor, finally the chancellor of UC Berkeley. 非常感人的一段，我帮他做 editing， 将会在田上的基金会里面会出版。有兴趣的话，将来你可以寄 email 给我，我可以分享这段非常感人的一篇文章。So I know what he said that, and he said in the beginning, my English was poor. 他从大陆逃难到台湾 ，entered 建国中学。But I wasn't very serious in learning. So even teaching in the United States in Berkeley, my broken English very often disappointed students. So he said that when you become a chancellor, 当校长的时候, one of the good students told him about Chancellor Tian. When you were lecturing in Berkeley 20 years ago, I understood only 20% of your English. 20%. However, your preparation of the contents, logical, systematic, solid contents, has all made up what we feel from your listening. And Chancellor Tian wrote in his lecture, saying, actually, I was so nervous in going to the classroom. And for those 20 years, for lecturing for 1 hour in the classroom, I had to spend about 7 to 8 hours preparing for that class, including what the first sentence I'm going to talk to the student, any humor, any joke, and logical transition, and so forth. And that's what him. But today, with the PowerPoint, with multimedia, we can do much more like that. So over here, the Ministry of Education provided a lot of scholarship for all of us to go over there for learning. And the review of EMI today, I think I want to share this kind of problem from the Minister's review over here. EMI is not very successful so far, but I hope the other patrons sponsor this program. When you go back to your school, you can do much better job. Number one, EMI, all the universities say, undesirable, okay. Number one, all the factors that undesirable English proficiency, student proficiency of English is poor. So there's no way unwillingness to respond to a challenge from a student. Students are not interested. Students tend to choose Chinese or translated version of the textbook. 原文书不用。The original text 你不用的话呢，现在台大每个学校都已经陷入危机。Now, who should help the student to persuade them? Professor. Talk with the student, help them, and some of the textbooks are very good. First, the EMI courses on MA and PhD program, offering Taiwanese culture in English, integrating EMI program by offering dynamic pedagogy. I think this is what exactly Tian Changling mentioned. Make class dynamic, interesting, Q&A and so forth. Special bonus for faculty offering EMI program that what every university is practicing. Most faculty members are reluctant to offer EMB. That's happened to most universities in Taiwan. But if I were you, I would try. I get better pay. In the meantime, I'm learning from this course with my thorough preparation. And I'm going to make progress. So all of these are what we are supposed to do. So the first thing is we have got to have the psychological adjustment. For example, when you go to the classroom, you have to be prepared or receive some kind of training or similar kind of program. This seminar, like the workshop like this one, help. Also, 教育部 Ministry of Education has some budget money to send faculty from university like yours to go to Australia, University of Newcastle, also Singapore, or some of the country for training. Stay over there for about, actually, do you know how long they stay over there? 1 month or a few weeks? 6 weeks. And now Singapore and so forth. So try to find a chance for that. Or try to participate as many international conferences as possible, nationally or internationally. In Taiwan, there are so many conferences being held every month. And ask yourself, your colleagues, and your student to participate in this kind of conversation. I usually ask my foreign students to take my place, to teach a class for about 5 to 10 minutes, or to talk to them, to present a paper. Then the student, we have to respond. And don't intimidate them, 不要让他们紧张，给他爱的鼓励。可能你可以说得很好，你放心等等。那第一步要做什么呢 I have 7 steps， 很快的 7 steps for EMI facilitation。新生来之后 ，after the class, try to make the student talk to them, or make friends with them. And then in the class, be sure to prepare the material thoroughly. 这是台科大 National Taipei University of Science Technology， 他们所有老师上之前 well prepared and talk about like this one, and also using the Indian student as research assistant. 那印度的学生英文都比我们好，所以最后呢，老师跟学生 they publish papers together in the journal。这么好，做 presentation。Students did a presentation together with a professor. Of course, Professor Chen is very, very good in English. Just because of that, he has a lot of publication co-author with international students. 所以他变成一个 chair professor. 这种资源很好利用，不是你披马单身在那做。And for the student together, you can ask them to get together, mingle the international student with our local student. 然后这还不够。During the discussion, the language must be in English, not in Chinese. Somebody had to take notes. Thirdly, the third step, before the class, students have to be prepared. The teacher will have to be prepared. In the class, everybody will have to participate. 鼓励他们，不要逼他们。他只要不要讲没关系。Then after class, do the homework for publication, for oral presentation. 这是我的学生做的，虽然是虚心，不是说这么精英的学生。那这学生呢 ，for example, just like this one, in the class they discuss together, then finally they debate all in English, and they demonstrate their guts, 勇气就来了。Finally, everybody will go to the platform to express their view through the discussion. 讲好讲没有关系，只要站上去，你就有了 credit。最后，台湾的学生跟美国学生在辩论，这个叫 public speaking and debate. Sophomores 大的学生可以跟美国学生辩论，但辩论一些 public question。辩论完不是 that's the end of the program。辩论完之后 ，something has to be done. For example, like this one， 辩论分那个 because there are too many students, so we divide the so-called group debate， 用分组、小组接龙的方式辩论。起承转合 like this one, so that nobody just stay idle. 一个35个班的学生 public speaking debate， 每一个人都有事做。跟老师，我的学生有机会睡觉吗？有人上学不肯下来了。But they find it so fascinating. 辩论 contents based， 内容本位，不是天马行空。吴宝春。台湾的大学该不该开后门让我尊进去 ？OK, student debate. Any topic has positive, negative, pro and con, affirmative and negative. 学生，我们想学生很多点子好的不得了。debate on this one， 吴宝春。那完这就是个 daily topic。最后我们谈到 nuclear plants in Taiwan， 从 Fukushima Island、3 Mile Island， 最后我们学生的第5步。学生完了以后 ，other debating, they have to work together, writing down their report, and submit to me, affirmative and negative. Then I post this on our website, 让学生分享。老师，这是大二的学生，英文写得很好。Of course, my role was to help them revise, and also facilitate, give them the courage. 就每个学生。就上课的时候就觉得好好玩 ，Everybody was learning to speak fluently, and beyond that, number 6， 带着学生到国外参加学术会议，我经常带学生，学没有钱 ，I get them transportation to go to 高雄 ，are from China。学生就像一块 hidden diamond underground， you have to dig it up, polish it with your love, your professional skill, and then they can go over there. 我亲自带学生，然后学生一个一个去参加 present paper， 有这样的经验。从台北到屏东的 National 高雄 University of Hospitality and Tourism 高雄的餐旅大学，这同学是从四川来的。我给他学生去，最后大三的学生 Junior got a scholarship to go to Rome for attending university student symposium. And I help her prepare the material. And she worked together with a professor from 政大中文系 talking about Chinese culture and literature. But I know that's not the end. She was responsible for sharing the experience with her classmates like this one. And during the sharing session, 你看 one student was so motivated, 高潮迭起问的问题，说这个 international and family publication 白纸黑字写出来。我们学生很懒，很懒的原因不是学生懒，老师懒。老师 did not exert too much effort to persuade, to help the student to do something. Student, for any writing, 我的写作文、写作课 I usually give comments like this one. Detailed comments, 不是说刚就会去，然后我要 revise, second time, third revision, 到最后 7 or 8 revision until it's acceptable. And then individual discussion like this one, there's a graduate student. Finally, the final version sent to me. I said it's good enough. 很多文献参考资料。Then afterwards, in 24 hours, the article was published in Taipei Times. Taipei Times 特别喜欢这篇文章，讲到台湾的社会，讲到唱妓的问题，讲到台北的一些社会问题。So student, now if you were a student, find your article published in any format, how do you feel? Well, they're excited. And that's exactly the productivity of teaching based on EMI. But of course, there's a person standing behind to give the boost of morale, the teacher. The teacher, and I spend more time teaching and preparing. And also there are more articles published and so forth like this one. So eventually this club benefits and challenging and rewarding, productivity, inspiration. And so finally the student learn the diverse background knowledge, 最后呢就获得真正的所谓的大智慧。所以 Harvard University, to conclude my presentation, I like this very much. Harvard University Derrick Book Center has done something more than any university in Taiwan. 我觉得台大根本做得不够，台大应该派学生、老师好到美国的大学去，真正怎么样的 learn how to nurture, help, provide a scaffold for EMI or advising student. I'm going to write a very severe and critical article to President Yang by early September. 大学新生开的节，我一定要写个好文章。台大应该怎么走，怎么做？ Now, Harvard University told all the incoming faculty like this one. And the first one say, professors, do you know the teaching technique? Have you ever thought that the role of the teacher and the student? Or do you know how to accommodate the needs of the student? And teaching technique. And also, here is innovation and advances. Teaching innovation, 教学创新，老师你做了没有？ Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm 75 years old, but every time when I prepare any lecture presentation or when I talk to the students, I prepare every single material, all kind of notes. And sometimes I find myself so lucky because yesterday I spent about 4 hours polishing the final version of 田长林已故的田长林校长的演说词。 The only lecture he lectured to Taiwanese students on his personal experience. 他一生求学的心路历程非常坦诚，非常感人。And based on that, I'm going to focus ours again on the importance of culture. So finally, in Harvard University, former President Derrick Book said, "Well, given that we have done all of this, still this is not enough. Harvard." We are suffering from the so-called underachieving colleges. 所以呢，我们中文把它翻作大学之道。什么叫大学之道呢？最近有篇文章，严坤阳在上礼拜写《联合报》副刊上写篇文章，三哀大学为台湾大学呢提供了3个悲哀的市政，三哀大学。 我下次呢准备跟他回应，我写个大学之道 based on this one. Okay, so based on this one, we have to beef up English proficiency for our students, particularly Taiwanese students. Taiwanese students are very, very special. Our Taiwanese students are a little bit different from in attitude, in mindset, in ethics. 有点不同 different from those in mainland China. Particularly, we're talking about students from Fudan, Beidang, Tsinghua. They're different from those students from University of Singapore, students from Malaysia, or even students from Korea. 你看韩国学生的奋斗程度 different from those in the United States, from UK. 唯一想哪一个国家学生呢 ？The poor Japanese students. 完全日本的这套。这个时候 I think the person who shall play the key role, the vital role, we. But before that, talk about using the word. I like to say the word wisdom. 足够的《金刚经》里面讲大智慧，然后帮助六道众生，尤其这学生都众生 ，regardless of being good or bad, they're our students. The entity we have to focus on. So that's. So on this one, I'm going to say thank you very much for sharing that, and thank you for being so patient with so many stories and the topic I try to present to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your inspiring speech. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will have a 15 coffee break. Please enjoy.
对不起，当时还有，我刚刚看的时候还有10分钟，是不是可以？我刚刚一个上一节10 minutes left. Then I'll be very happy to have any challenge from the floor. 有没有我们有不同的看法？很粗浅的看法，但是 I just want to tell you this. All these are the experience I've gathered ever since 1956 when I graduated from the university, teaching for 3 years in junior high, and I taught one time part-time at 师大附中, and then went to study in the United States and teaching 师大, 台大, and now Shishi University, and traveling to so many universities in the whole world. I was lucky to have the chance to be invited to visit about 500 universities in the United States, from the north to the south, 最北部的，从 Boston 纽约最北部的，一直到美南最南部的 Albany University, University of Kentucky, 甚至到个黑人专属的学校，叫 Tuskegee University, 这种黑人学校等等。好，各位老师 ，any question or comments? Please. I was told 5 minutes. Yeah, yes, 老师。
老师好，我是那个东华大学的刘维玉老师，其实曾经是老师的学生哈。那老师，我刚刚其实有一个很特别，因为您说您其实看过很多的大学，然后刚刚你在最后的时候说，台湾的大学生其实跟很多其他的都不一样。那您后面要讲什么？所以你刚刚说什么《金刚经》那个，不是，我是说，如果是你觉得最重要的不同，然后最需要的会是什么
？Okay, very good. Thank you for your good question. I threw out a question, but I did not provide answer. 金刚经里面有一句话叫“顽石点头”，可以让顽石点头。Actually, that's exactly what I learned from the time I graduated from 师范大学, going to teach in the junior high school, 大华中学. When I went to 大华中学, it's a private school. They kept all of the flunk students in one class. 留级生全部集中在这一班留级的学生。这班学生呢，留级学生就让我当导师。I wasn't disappointed. I firmly believe that it's not their fault for being flunk. So using the technique, the pedagogy I learned from 师范大学, I was confident I'm going to change the student. So the student in this class finally became a very, very good class. So my point is, Now, facing the reality, the crisis of our education climate in this kind of higher education landscape, what we can do is to change the attitude and practice the pedagogy of ours, the professors, to reach the student, help them, advise them with love. That's my point. How can I guide them? And eventually, not only you, your student, some of the parents of my student, 特别从花莲寄个年糕给我，说感谢你把孩子呢教得这么好，一个单亲妈妈过来送个年糕，我看好感动。The mother gave me a sweet cake, just reward my advising her daughter. And this student finally went to Donghua to work as a student help, 教学助理. And we still keep corresponding with his daughter. Today, he is now in the foreign service. 考取外交特考，现在派驻新加坡. She is now stationed in Singapore. So keep learning. So I think the relationship between your student and ourselves is a lifelong relationship. So it's terminated, and they still keep corresponding with us through email, and today, more frequently, by FB. So we can do something. We can't do anything completely, but proportionally, we do as much as we can. 100个，我们能够救回10个、5个，那也够了。Yes， 老师。
在您的那个教学的这个时间，应该有好多学生。那我们要怎么跟这些学生有像您刚刚说的那些联系？因为实在是很忙啊。对，这要怎么来处理？
Well, thanks to information technology, IT 帮助我们老师。第一个 ，during the first class, I have a special secret copy from my American professors. The first class, I had the information card, 资料卡 student's name, English, Chinese, birth date, school graduated, family, parents' name, telephone number, email, interest, previous experience traveling. 我没想到很多私立学校学生，高中、大学已经走遍全世界很多地方了。Future expectation, career expectation, and so forth. And finally, I make a group list of email, 群组名单. So when I have any material after class, I pinpoint some of the major slides, and I just send, in a fraction of a minute or a second. I send to all students for reference. And secondly, I'm a good reader. I read all the kind of newspapers, articles, and so forth. And whenever I find a good article, I usually edit a little bit, revised, highlight some of them, and I send to the student for reading. And for this part, I'm not ambitious enough. Out of 60 students, as long as 10 or 20 students read the article, I send to them. I think it's good enough. I don't expect everybody to be our future leaders. I just expect 1 or 2 for that. So time management is very important. 时间利用, you concentrate on doing what you're going to do. And so finally, I think one thing that's really important, you must have the passion, interest, 喜欢跟学生 and make the best use of the tool, 工具太重要了。你不要说你的手机你可以随时可以 you can read the New York Times, USA Today, all kind of newspapers, material using your cell phone. Okay, so convenient. You can talk with the students through line. And this kind of student can keep lifelong relationship with you. And that's important. 永续的这种关系我觉得很重要，将会让当老师的感到非常窝心，感到非常快乐，快乐的一直感到不知老之将至。Like myself, I'm happy every day. Okay, yes. How about lady first? Yes.
this is Shiolin from Donghua University, and I'm very lucky to be here to listen to your lecture. And I think not so many people has your experience. I just heard that you visit or teaching around 500 universities, even in Africa. Okay, and I think because we are in the higher education, so we know our students. Maybe we should, not only the students' problem, maybe this generation also has some problem, because we set up a very safe and a rich environment for the students. So the students, of course, they don't need to work so hard, and they can get what they want. And my question is, because in our view, we think Africa is very miserable world. And I just wonder, what do the students think, and what's their perspectives of the world and their life? Thank you.
Okay, I think the faculty should work, university should work with their parents. There are many wonderful parents in Taiwan, sending their students, providing them with fun and traveling budget to travel to Southeast Asia, India, even Africa to serve as international volunteer, participating in international volunteerism and so forth. But of course, Africa is not safe today because of Ebola. But we remember Zhang Jiaen, the case. Going to Southeast Asia, that's a good choice. So I think the best thing is to work with the parents and also advise the student about what they can do. And of course, this kind of experience, participating in an international activity, and long-term, short-term, or volunteer work, can give them some weight in about their future application to university, home, or abroad. And also culturally, they can increase the scope of their cultural awareness in the future, making them a more receptive person in the long run. Since you two are from Donghua Dashi, I respect a very, very good, a highly respectable scholar in your university, Zheng Zhenzhen Lao Shi, especially translating and teaching literature, particularly citing and translating the Swiss Eyes of Toni Morrison. She's a wonderful, experienced teacher and a parent with her son studying in the University of California. Yes.
I hate to be the person who interrupts at this moment, but we have to take a break. We probably can take one more question, and then we can move to the break reception, and we can continue the discussion over there. Okay? Sure. One more question.
So, yes.
Morning, Dr. Lee. You quote many words from Jin Gang Jin, right? But the first sentence, the first story of Jin Gang Jin, mentioning that the believer of Buddha actually provide a very comfortable environment for Buddha, so that the Buddha can share his knowledge to his believers, right? Okay, so back to our environment. Do you think in Taiwan nowadays the revocation, the environment, and all the things provided to professors at school is good enough for professors to devote their time, their life, and then so that we can turn our disqualified students to qualify before graduation from school?
Well, so far, our centralized government policy will prevent good university from being collapsed. Therefore, the mechanism is to safeguard the university so that professors or teachers, that we have the good equal opportunity to keep teaching over there. But what we should do, unless there's a so-called part-time faculty, I don't know how many of you are part-time teachers, or the so-called 流浪教师，大学里面是流浪教师，是有 part-time 老师。I think as long as you keep working hard, 不断的精进 keep pursuing advanced study, academically or non-academic approach, like what you mentioned, 金刚经，金刚它大智慧是整个天地无所不包的，爱人爱物、众生、六道众生等等。Give them love, give them patience, and eventually you're going to nurture you're going to empower yourself for doing something better. Specifically, for example, for me, I would say, keep reading, keep talking, keep thinking yourself. One thing I'm going to mention over here is reading. It's the most important language skill for my students. I told my students, without reading, for gathering your background knowledge, you can do nothing for speaking, listening, and writing. And for us too, I think the more you read, the more you can learn. And secondly, you've got to have some kind of optimistic thought. Okay, and keep writing papers, keep participating in more activity, like meeting more people. And just a quote from my professors in the past in Berkeley. Anytime you feel so depressed, so sad, you feel like committing suicide, you are your friend. Tell him or yourself to do one thing. Leave this place. Get away from here. Travel somewhere else. 换一个环境，我们去看一看。你在看到外面，万里无云，万里天，千江有水千江月，大地这么美，这么漂亮。Why bother isolating yourself just like this one? And that's why all the time I feel like posting some more information, academically, or traveling, or entertainment, or inspiring on my Facebook to share with as many people as possible. And I say, well, no matter what happened, this world is so beautiful. And to be a human being, I think we should be blessed. That's 金刚经. Thank you.